guys, so this video will be about order flow, right? We're going to take this like as a separate concept to structure. Obviously we want everything tied in together eventually, but it's just good to study the concept separately. I always found that the best way to work personally was like taking apart each concept on its own and then tying them all together as such, so you get like a more holistic picture of the market, right? Order flow is different to structure in the fact that we're not necessarily looking at like the major highs and lows of the market, right? We're looking at buy and sell ranges, right? And are they being protected? In which case we can expect the most recent range to be protected and to continue the move in the desired direction, or are they being targeted, right? So yeah, if we just take this part very simply, right, we can see here that, I mean, we're clearly in a bearish market, right? Like, you know, you can see that. But we'll just take like from here to here, and we'll follow this move down basically, right? So we can see here that we had our last supply range here, right? We then come in, mitigate this supply range here, and then break this supply range here. Right, let's zoom in on this a little bit more. And then we break this supply range here, right? So now this becomes our demand range, right? So our buying range essentially, right? We then come back down, and we can mitigate these ranges. You know, there's various other POIs, stuff like that within these ranges, right? But we can see this one doesn't get mitigated deeply, so this one is still valid for a period of time at least, right? We then see up here that we create a new range, right? We come down, we mitigate, we fail to continue, so we create like a supply range here, and you can see here like order flow's messy, right? That's because we're in a complex pullback, right? Complex pullbacks tend to mess around a lot more. It's why they're harder to trade, right? You know, because there's a lot of transactions going on here, there's a lot of selling into it, there's people trying to force price up, etc., right? So we can just see all of these switches in order flow. It's why we need to be a lot more on our toes when it comes to complex pullbacks essentially. We then create these buying ranges here, right? We create this whole larger sell range here, right? And we obviously have unmitigated POIs within this. We switch order flow a couple more times down here, which I'll mark up in a second. But you can see why ideally we need to align it with structure, right? Especially in complex pullbacks, because they're complex. You know, we get various runs on highs and lows and all of this stuff, right? You know, we then create some supply ranges here. But you can see overall we're looking like the best places to trade from are these bigger unmitigated ranges, right? Like we create this range up here, we never really fully mitigate it. When we do, we mitigate the extreme, we go to hell for a bit, we come back down to this unmitigated, well, not fully mitigated range, give a pop to the upside, yeah, basically like this. And it's just following these ranges and waiting really until things are all aligned, right? So ideally we want 15M, so here we can say that 15M structure is bearish, right? We're expecting a lower high, right? But we've got this larger unmitigated range above, right? So until we tap into this, we can say the higher time frame objective isn't met yet, but we get this realignment in order flow here with structure and thingy, and that's why we see this move to the downside. But the higher time frame objective of mitigating this higher range isn't met yet, right? So cool, now we can just keep following this down, right? And we can say that now if we take out this low, which we have, right? We've got structure and order flow and complete alignment, so these ranges should now be respected until we continue to create, until we continue the structural objective, right? Okay, cool, so we meet there, right? We come into this, break low, so we've got a new supply range here, right? But we've also got unmitigated levels within here until it's like fully mitigated, it's not dead, right? Cool, we break order flow here, right? So now we break order flow, structure and order flow are out of alignment. So now we will most likely see some form of continued push to meet the higher time frame objective up here or whatever it is, right? Come down, mitigate the range, create a new range. And you could even say that we've broken out of the range here. Right, we create another buying range here, and you can just see how they're all respected, right? These are banks protecting themselves, right? They don't want these ranges to be run at present, right? Cool, we see more movement to the upside. We then create this last buying range here, right? This sell to buy. So now we need to look down here. We can see that this range got initiated out. I've never really got initiated out properly, right? So this is like the first mitigation, but this doesn't really do anything, right? But yeah, anyway. So then we start to see that range get broken, right? So now we can say that this is our supply range. Yeah, this is our supply range, right? So now let's just keep an eye on what happens here. Okay, we come in, we don't violate the range. Do we break the low and create a new selling range? Remember, like here we've just come back into alignment, right? Like this is the first alignment, so generally the second alignment will be the trade that absolutely melts, right? Cool, broken the range there, right? So we've got a whole new supply range from here to here, right? But we've obviously, as stated earlier, we have other stuff inside these ranges that we want to look at. But yeah, price comes back in, melts, right? So cool, now we've got like a new supply range here to here, and on a higher time frame, if we take this low, we've got a whole new supply range as well. This is like a 4H supply range, something like that, right? Cool, we take that low, so here we have that whole new supply range. So the chart will be quite messy, and this is not an abstract concept, but it's one that you need to study and stuff, right? Because it's super powerful, right? Then we come back up, we violate this range here, right? This is like our smaller supply range within this. Violate the top of that, so we have a new demand range. Right, we can see price, as soon as it initiates out, it comes back down, mitigates the demand range, and pushes up. Right, so new demand range, here. Okay, now we can see that these demand ranges aren't really doing a lot. Okay, cool, we've got a new demand range here. We broke this high here. Right, but you can see how weak the bullish order flow is compared to the bearish order flow. Right, you can start sort of studying ranges a bit more closely here. Right, you can say, okay, well, we've created this internal range. Do we take the high of that? No, now we do. So now we had a quick sell to buy here. I mean, this is all not in session, so it's ideal. Cool, so we've got a new range there. I mean, even here we're getting like internal ranges, stuff like that, but this is really our demand range. This is the last thing that really broke a high. So once that low goes, cool, there, right, we've got our supply range here to here. right? So we're looking for the mitigation of that and the continuation to the downside because we have order flow and alignment, right? Mitigate and death, right? And obviously we want to refine these areas to better, like more precise areas, but you can see, right, anytime we've got bearish structure, we see these shifts in order flow, and the shifts are corrective, right? When we see these continuations, we start to see this aggression to the downside, right? So cool, now we've got, and you can see here how these ranges are all respected until the objective of this low getting taken, because this is the weak low, right? It hasn't broken a swing high, right? You can see how they are respected until that objective. See, they struggle with it, yeah, fine, but they haven't broken it yet. Still not broken it. They break it there? No, equal lows. Okay, broken it, cool. So where's our new supply range? Well, it's this to this. Right, so again, mitigation of and continuation away from. And we can see these littler demand ranges being formed, stuff like this, right? But you can see how powerful this concept of like the whole previous range is, right? It gives us a great place to start to study where we can get in, right? Like we know, it's like here, right? This is a great example. People getting in here are thinking, cool, this is running the low because structurally we're bearish, but we haven't mitigated this larger supply range yet, right? So until that happens, we don't really want to hold trades here. We want to target the unmitigated things because we don't know if these are going to continue through yet, right? Anytime we come back into the larger previous range, like here for instance, right? Here's our larger range. Here for instance, here's our larger range. You know, even here for instance, this is our whole larger range. We can then refine this down to this range, then we can refine this, you know, to this range here, which we would call our POI, and then we can see price just never comes back from it, right? Comes up, messes around a bit and that, right? But the objective is to run the low, right? And you can see like all of these ranges again are getting respected, right? Like, and here, this is where a lot of times sometimes we'll miss out, right? Because we'll go, oh, well, you know, this range wasn't respected or we didn't hit this POI, right? So we're thinking that right now, price, when it gets here, right, when we come into this, we're looking at this going, okay, well, price is going to run the liquidity here, right, mitigate something in here and then continue down. But if we zoom in on this, right, and this is why structure and order flow are much more, not important than liquidity, but they hold more weight when we're determining where we're going to trade from, right? Liquidity we need in all of our trades, but we need to build it into the confluences, right? So here, we get this range here, right? Look, this gets initiated out of here, right? So what's this? This is our new, smaller supply range, right? So this, in essence, is the protected sell order, right? As soon as this gets broken, right, which it does there, this is our protected sell order, right? Not here, not here, right? If this goes, we can assume that probably this liquidity is going and probably this liquidity up here is going, right? And then price comes back into it and off it drops, right? You see it just never comes back, right? And you see how price is leaving these unmitigated things. Look here again, we see this range, right? This gets mitigated, price never mitigates this. Right, okay, so let's keep an eye. We know we're still structurally bearish, so, you know, and we can see all these littler demand ranges building, etc., right? But we've still got this unmitigated area. Okay, cool, we've created new supply ranges like here, right? And you can see why it's so important to just follow that last range as well, right? Never gets mitigated. Right, does that mitigate? Yeah, like literally taps the bottom of that perfectly, melts, right? new supply range created. Continuation from new supply range created. And obviously we can refine this to more, but we just want to study how what price is doing. Okay, cool. We mitigate some form of supply within these wicks. Okay, we failed to follow through. Right, so this is now our shift in order flow. Right, because we've initiated out the high of a range, so this all has to be taken into context with everything else. But for now, we can expect that these hold, right, because we have equal highs here. This has failed to do its job, right, this supply range here, which has mitigated this range here. Right, you see how it pops back in, pops out, no follow through. Okay, cool, demand range. Let's see what happens in there. Right, okay, comes into the demand range, mitigates deeper, does it follow through? No. So do we take the high of this larger range, or what happens here? You know, these are all the questions we want to be asking ourselves. Right, let's go and see this. Right, okay, so we've had this supply range created here, this supply range created here, gets mitigated here, so this is our last supply range. Okay, this gets taken out. Right, so this is our demand range from here to here, so we want to be looking within that. Okay, and then we can go and build some confluences on what we can possibly expect mitigation, right? So, right, okay, so here we've seen this POI gets mitigated. Right, and we're just looking for stuff before the break of the range. That's why all this is all dead, right? None of this is going to get a reaction, right? Because it's not the mitigated, it's not the unmitigated buy order, right? Okay, so this pops here, we create these buy to sell wicks. Pop up, right, we react to something else in the high here, we come back down, we mitigate those, right, and this wick is left with no mitigation. Okay, what other confluences can we build on that, right? Well, we've got equal lows here. This is where liquidity becomes important, right, because we're building it on top of these ideas. Right, so now we want to see what happens when we come here. Right, ping, off we go. Right, range created. Right, here's your continuation trade somewhere within here. Right, range created, never mitigated, so we may get a reaction from that at some point in the future. Most likely not, because we're still overall bearish on the higher time frames, but really we're looking at like this unmitigated thing up here now as the target for that. Right, range created, range disrespect. Oh, okay, it does come back to the yeah, continues to follow through. Right, we create a new buying range here. Right, and yeah, we've got various things in here, but we'll just take the bigger stuff. You know, price comes back in, comes into the range. Does it violate the range or does it not violate the range? Violates the range, comes back down deeper for a deeper mitigation somewhere in here because this is unmitigated. So now again, what we want to look for is just that shift in OF. Right, so here we've got our last supply range. And this is how you start like really building those confluences on top of each other, right, to you know, build those high quality trade ideas that do the big R. Right, we pop that, well, we've even popped that here, look, you see? The devil is always in the details, right guys? Here you can see that we create this little range here. Right, that pops this range here, so here's our in, right? Unmitigated thing within there. And look at the reaction. You know, comes back down to mitigate this again, so again we're still seeing all of that protected at the moment, which is great. right? But we know that overall we're still bearish on that higher time frame stuff, so let's just wait and see what happens up here, right? Range created, range protected. You see, so it's just searching for that objective at this point in time. Right, range not mitigated, so maybe we get a reaction out of this later on, maybe we get a reaction down here somewhere. Okay, new range. Right, like anytime we see a pullback, it's basically a new range, right? Not structural stuff, because this isn't defining our structure. Cool, broken range, so we've got a new supply range now, here to here, so we can look within here for shorts, because overall if we go up time frames, we know that we are still bearish on this, right? We can see that we're searching for that lower high. Right, it's come from a very nice mitigation. It's actually mitigated 4H POI over here. Right, we've shifted order flow. Okay, cool. So now we've got 4H structure and 15M order flow. Right, we haven't got structure in alignment, but we've got order flow. Right, price comes back to mitigate quite deep, pushes down, new supply range. Right, mitigate this, we give a bit of a reaction, we pop back up, and we can see here even this supply range is mitigated here. Right, this pushes out, re-mitigates the range. It's any time a range is broken basically, right? Like a mitigation has to happen after, like this is not a mitigation of this, right? Because it hasn't happened before, after the range is broken basically, so it can't mitigate out of the range essentially. Okay, cool, we're seeing some nice bearish order flow come in. You can see how the demand is really struggling to push the highs anymore, right? So we can start expecting some downside. Okay, this gets protected. This is never mitigated, right? You see how it never gets mitigated. Creates equal highs below it, so that's a future POI. Right, this is all equal highs now. Okay, price initiates out. Right, this doesn't come back into mitigate, but yeah, we've got essentially a couple of new ranges like here and here potentially. Right, this is all still, this is still within this range, so I tend to go for the higher price thing. Yeah, price pushes down. Got a new supply range here, so until this is violated, right, we can look for shorts to continue. And this is based just purely on an order flow perspective, right? Okay, cool, we run that. Okay, we run this. What do we come into over here? Do we tap that? Yeah, we come into the range, we don't come into anything super significant. We've got liquidity up here, and now we've got this whole larger supply range again, right? So things within here are valid, nothing, you know, well, really we've got this range, this gets, does that mitigate? It gets tapped at the bottom here, so we've got this range. Then we've got this range. Right, so we want to see a shift in order flow again because we're having to break order flow. Okay, cool. Do we see a sell range created and protected? Sell range created, sell range protected. Right there to there because it breaks out of this low. Right, we come back in, we mitigate the range, we continue down. Come back, and we mitigate the range again, then we continue down. Mitigate the range, we continue down. Mitigate the range, continue, and you can just see, you see how powerful it is, right? When you start getting like all of these into alignment, look, you can, like, you know, just from this overall picture here of this higher mitigation, right, we can just start following this. Here we get a shift in order flow, short it, right? Here we get another shift in order flow, bearish, short it. Here again, shift in order flow, bearish, short it, here, 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 short it, right? Here, short it, right? Higher time frame objective met. Now let's watch for the pullback. Cool. Shift in OF, right? Longs, right? Shift in OF, shorts to continue to lower prices, right? That is super, super interesting. I love it. I find it one of the most fascinating things in the market. But yeah, like, I hope that makes sense to everyone. As I said, like, all over the place. If anything doesn't, just let us know, and we'll happily jump on Zoom to go over it, make another video, something like that. But yeah, peace and love, guys. I will speak to you all later.